All right, here we are again. It's Todd Ledbetter, and we are in 1993. We're moving along in the 90s now, and I got some great albums. There's quite a bit to choose from, but there's a lot of new music and new music styles. You're getting a lot of rap and a lot of that kind of hip hop and stuff like that, really starting to come into the mainstream. Stuff that I wasn't necessarily really into so much, but definitely was popular. And I generally don't listen to that type of music, although I have, and especially back then. Um, but it's not really my thing. Regardless of that, I have a top six picks as far as albums go for 1993, which are my favorite albums of that year. And there's a few. I could go to a top 10, would be easy for me to do. But we're just going to stick with the top. In 1994, I'll do a top 10. It's kind of the way things have been going. So let's get started with my number six as far as 1993 goes. Let's see what we got here. So we got Grantley Buffalo. This is my number six pick. I really like Grantley Phillips, and this was his band before he went solo. He's been solo for ages. But this is just kind of a glimpse of things to come as far as Grantley Phillips goes, and I really like this album. It's really not anything that was charting too much on this album, but I was so happy to have found it and to be introduced to Grantley Phillip, and super great. It's kind of a mix of almost like a folksy sort of Americana rock and somewhat political. Like American Snoring is a very interesting song, kind of apropos for even now. If you get a chance to listen to Grantley Buffalo or even Grantley Phillips, his solo work, I still follow him on his Facebook, and he's very active on social media, and he does a lot of just acoustic playing. Like you're seeing a lot of that kind of going on right now during this shutdown, as far as the coronavirus crap is concerned, and a lot of musicians doing that. But he's been doing that for years. He's been sort of putting himself out there in the social media, and he's had quite a long career. I don't know how successful he is, but he's still going, and super great. If you like that kind of Americana, mixed with kind of a little bit of rock, a lot of acoustic, really nice acoustic stuff, and for sure his melodies have improved, and even his voice has improved since this time and this recording. But it's a really good album, so I do enjoy it. That's Grantley Buffalo, um, and super good album. Love it. It's my number six. All right. So, having said that, let's see. I kind of feel like I'm. Let's see here. What am I doing? I'm losing my ability to move things around. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So my number five is definitely one of those albums that we all heard and was a big success um, back then. Let's see. My screen's all over the place. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Got it. Yeah. So it's the Smashing Pumpkins. There we go. Siamese Dream. Pretty good. You got Cherub Rock, Quiet Today, Hummer, Rocket, Disarm, another big hit. Pretty cool. And one thing I noticed about a lot of these albums on my particular list here, not all of them, not really Grantley Buffalo so much, but some of the other ones, you're starting to hear a lot of new technology introduced too. Like as far as like the digital technology is for amp modeling and things like that is really starting to come into play with a lot of these bands that I've chosen today. And Smashing Pumpkins is definitely one that you start hearing like new sounds, that we haven't really heard so much in the rock sort of genre. However you want to classify these guys. I mean, I don't know. Are they rock? Are they grunge? You know, what are they? I don't know. But definitely hearing a lot of new sounds as far as like guitar tones and also drum. There's a lot of these bands. There's a lot of like drum machines and drum beats going on, and then alongside real drums, and then triggering and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an interesting list here where you're getting a lot of that sort of feel and sort of the introduction to some of these new sounds that have just gone sort of bananas since then. Um, so that's my number five is the Smashing Pumpkins Siamese Dream. So my next number four, let's see here. I'm gonna have to go and do it like this. Yeah, Collective Soul. This is their debut album. It says 1994, but it was actually released in '93 on an independent label, and Shine was getting a lot of attention, and so they were picked up by a bigger label, and then it was re-released in '94. But it was originally released in '93, so I'm just going to kind of go with that because that's when this album was originally released. Pretty good album. I was sort of like I think I told the story before, but I was working in a wood shop for just a real short time before I started my own wood shop, and one of the guys that was in there doing some work, he hated this band. I don't know why. He just couldn't stand it. He just thought it was stupid and didn't like it, and it's funny how people's remarks can influence you so much. And so I ignored them for years, and then finally they were just all of a sudden after this they really started having a lot of hits, and I couldn't really ignore it anymore. And then I finally started buying some of their albums, and I just fell in love with them. I love Collective Soul. There's a lot there to enjoy. I like their harmonies. I like their a lot of great guitar licks. They're a good band. They got a lot of cool songs, a lot of cool arrangements. Uh, some of it's rocking, some of it's mellow, but this was kind of the start of it all, and I really like this album, and I really like Collective Soul. And so, if you haven't heard that album, check it out. And even after their popularity kind of waned, I was still buying their albums, and I would put them in my my MP3 player at the time. Before everything was on your phone, you had separate MP3 players, and I would go through I'd walk and run down to the beach from my house and exercise and whatnot, and listen to those albums, and it was just so good, just so good. I loved it. All right, so that's already we're halfway through. Okay, well, I'm not sure why my screen's acting funny today, so I have to kind of expose all my stuff. It's nicer if I can hide it from you so you don't just see everything I've got going here. But it doesn't really matter. It's more important just to talk about the music than to keep it all a secret. Okay, Pablo Honey by Radiohead. Yeah, so here we are. We get to be introduced to Radiohead now, and talk about like introduced to a lot of new sounds and a lot of new technology. They definitely employed some of that stuff in this album, and they took it even to extremes in later albums. But once again, you got things like Creep, which was pretty much the big hit off of this album. But nevertheless, you definitely get sucked into all things Radiohead here in this album. As with a lot of their albums, they might have had a couple of songs that were hits, but it's a lot of times the deep cuts in the Radiohead uh, uh, albums and songs that are the ones that are really really good. That's what I've said it before. That's what to me makes an album. Is not the hits, because you can pretty much never ever care if you hear the hits again. Basically, it's the deep cuts that really kind of make an album what it is, and get and what really gets me excited about it, and where I start to really enjoy music, and I get to become a fan of certain bands. And Radiohead's one of those bands where, they just, if I'm really in the mood for that, that Radiohead feeling, because they definitely give you a feeling, when you're listening to it, and you can just get lost in it. And that's a perfect band for that. So super excited about Pablo Honey, and all of a sudden here we are. We're introduced to Radiohead, and more to come from them. I am certain of that. All right, so let's see my number two. Let's get out of this one and then go to the U2, Zooropa. Kind of a funny album. I mean, I'm not sure. A lot of people tell me they don't like U2. I don't know why. They're like the Beatles. They have all this different styles of music. How can you not find something you like? But this particular album is, like Rattle and Hum was very different album for them. It was real Americana, real rootsy kind of music. Well, this is like the opposite of that. Just a couple albums later, they had Octoon Baby, and then they had Zooropa, and this album is very, very just rife with new technology and sounds, and very different. And I wish I could play some of it. If you haven't heard this album, it's not your typical U2 album, but it is very good. I like it for what it is, and to the point where it's actually my second album. I listened to this all the time when I had it. I was happy it was different, frankly. I mean, I really liked that they were being experimental. Zooropa, Babyface, Numb, Lemon is a great song. Stay is a gorgeous song. Stay is just a beautiful song. Far Away, So Close is great. But super good, super good. This The Wanderer, it's got the Edge and Johnny Cash on singing on it, so that's kind of a cool little thing. Edge is great. He's so multi-talented, but as is Bono, of course, the whole group. Very different album for U2, but frankly, it's a kind of refreshing in 1993. Even though it's even so many years back, um, it was new and fresh, and it didn't do that great, I don't think, as far as U2 albums go. But I liked it, and I thought it was good because I was a big U2 fan by then. And sometimes when you're a fan, you like anything they do. But I, admittedly, like I said, it's a very different album, and it's probably not for everybody, but I certainly liked it. And that brings me to my number one. And of course, my number one for 1993 is Rush, Counterparts. Here is a rockin' album. Kind of back to the roots, really, if you wanna say that. This, not so much keyboards in Counterparts at all. If any. I've listened to it recently, and I was trying to find some, and it's like, this is drums, guitar, and bass and vocals, and it kicks ass. It is such a good album. Every song on this is a great song. Anime, it was a great opener. Stick It Out, Cut to the Chase, Nobody's Hero is very interesting lyrically, and well, musically, but very interesting. Well, of course, how Rush's lyrics are. They're all interesting, but very interesting story here to follow along with. Between the Sun and Moon, Alien Shores is great. The Speed of Love, super great. Double Agent, love it. Leave That Thing Alone. Man, I love Rush's instrumentals. I mean, don't you? Don't you love them too? I mean, how many instrumentals are on Rush albums? Almost every album has an instrumental that is just amazing. It's probably almost like the best song on the album. Sometimes it's like, oh my god, just a great, great album. And like I said, just a kick-ass rock album. Not so much keyboards. They kind of boom went back to their roots and sort of just forget all that, and let's just rock it. And they did. They succeeded, and it was a really good album. I liked it a lot. And I liked it. It was kind of a concept album too. Counterparts. I can't really describe to you what all the meaning was, but I believe this one was kind of a well, similar to Roll the Bones. I mean, Roll the Bones was kind of a concept loosely too. It's a lot. It was a lot about chance and a lot about luck. Lyrically, and things like that. Roll the Bones, kind of like Roll the Dice, and like that. And Counterparts is sort of that too. It's like sort of a, you know, a yin and a yang sort of concept loosely. I mean, I can't really remember the concept completely, but I just remember that it was sort of dubbed as that. But that was my that's my list for 1993. I mean, some fantastic music here, you know, and like I said, a lot of new sounds and interesting music coming out. You got the Grantley Buffalo with Fuzzy, super, just a great album. If you want to just, you know, put this in while you're driving or just kicking back, you know, having a beer in the backyard. Just almost an anytime album or doing some housework, you know, just putzing around the house and stuff. It's a great album. Check it out. Also, check out more of Grantley Phillips' solo stuff too. Then you got Smashing Pumpkins, you know, the Siamese Dreams. That was kind of a big deal in '93. That was my number five. Then you got Collective Soul's debut album, Hints, Allegations, and Things Left Unsaid. It's a long title. But I just, you know, this is not their best album, but, you know, I'm not sure which one is. But I mean, like I said, I listened to them way past the point where they were making hits and famous, basically, and out there doing arenas and stuff. And they still had, just like this song, there's one hit off of it, but still there's a lot of good songs. And just like the albums after their hit making period, there's still a lot of really great songs that are Collective Soul style songs that just kill it. And I just like their sound. And so even though they're not making hits or hit maker or whatever, I still like their sound and I like what they do. You know, because the music industry is funky like that. You know, they're just not going to let everybody always. They're not going to push everybody all the time because they always want the next new guy. And the way music is today is so different than it was then. Yeah, so Collective Soul, that was my four. And then Radiohead, Pablo Honey, just a great introduction. I remember people just like, whoa, have you heard Radiohead? Have you heard this? You know? And boy, they lived up to the hype from their first album for sure. And then you got your Zooropa from U2 as my number two, a very different album. But I mean, gosh, you can almost say that about, you know, a lot of albums. There was a period of time where they were very similar, you know, and then they did some experimental, and then they kind of go back to their bread and butter. But even if you listen to the last like three or four albums, it's very experimental in a way, and not a lot of that music gets played on the radio. But like I said, as an album, because like I've said it before, is that I'm sort of an album guy. I like to listen to the whole album. I'm not a song guy. I don't, unless I'm listening to the radio, of course. But I like to listen to albums. If I put something on, and I'll listen to the whole thing, you know, unless I run out of time and I have to do something, whatever. But you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. I'm an album guy. And that's what's cool about Zooropa. Kind of, you're like, whoa, that is bizarre. That's very different for them. And so, you know, if you haven't heard that, or if you didn't like it at first because it was very different, it's interesting how, even though then it was very different, it fits right in to many things that came after that. They're really kind of a trendsetter in a lot of ways with that album, if I dare say that. Because a lot of the things they did there, they were way ahead of their time. And you can, when you listen to it, you're going to go, yeah, that's true. But this sounds like stuff that I've been hearing lately, or, you know, way after that in the next decade or whatever. And then of course Counterparts is just a kick-ass rock Rush album for those people that, you know, love Rush back in the 70s and their 80s stuff. And you know, they started losing interest, you know, after the mid 80s or whatever, because of keyboards or whatever. If you haven't heard Counterparts, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. If you're you know, Rush fans are funny. It's like, okay, you got your Rush fans that are, you know, they like the Spirit of Radio or whatever that was on the radio. But Rush fans are hardcore Rush fans, and that's always been their thing. They had a cult following that they built to a mass cult following. You know, I don't think it ever really got out of the cult realm. Even when they were playing stadiums, it's still for some reason you love Rush or you don't. You hardly hear people that are, you know, on the fence with them. But I'm definitely a Rush fan, and I think a lot of rock musicians are Rush fans because of the quality that they offer every single time on their albums. And you know they're not just phoning it in at any point, even when they're being more experimental with things. You know, it's hard. You know, they're working on it and trying to do the best they can to give you a product that they believe in for themselves. They're enjoying it, and then if we just happen to like it, you know, they're playing what they want to play, and then the Rush fans love it. So that's what's cool about Rush. And check out this Counterparts album because it rocks. All right. Well, let's see. Um, okay, this is this darn thing. Let me find my okay, yeah. So some of the other albums that were kind of going on at this point in 1993, you know, you got in Utero by Nirvana. Like I said before, not a huge Nirvana fan, although I like them, you know. They're just not in my top 10 today, and generally never really are my top 10. You got things, and like I said earlier in this episode, you know, you got like Wu-Tang Clan, you're getting Snoop Doggy Dogg, you're getting a lot of different, you know, rappers really coming into the you know, top 100. Things like Pearl Jam, you got Sheryl Crow and Counting Crows, Liz Phair, Bjork, Mariah Carey, Tribe Called Quest. You got Cypress Hill, the Cranberries, Janet Jackson, R. Kelly, just, you know, stuff like that. That a lot of it I never really got into. PJ Harvey I tried to get into, never really got into it. You got the Pet Shop Boys, Sarah McLachlan, Sting, Maisie Starr. Tool is a band that I acknowledge is a fantastic band, but I also have to acknowledge that I'm not super familiar with Tool. I never really got into buying and listening to their albums, although I have been listening to more and more of them with some of the things that I've been interactive with online. And I'm definitely going to start studying more of their music, and I think they've got a brand new album out, and I've heard a couple songs off that blew my mind. And so I did have a Tool album back in the 90s, and it might have been this one. I just didn't wrap my head around it at the time, but I think I would appreciate Tool a lot more now. So I'm going to start doing that to get a little bit more into that. You got some more Depeche Mode. You got Blur. You got Meatloaf. Back to Hell or Bat Out of Hell 2, whatever you want to call it. Melissa Etheridge. You got Salt and Pepper. Remember the Crash Test Dummies? Remember that? Those guys. You got some more Lenny Kravitz, Candlebox, Primus, Morphine, some Billy Joel. You got Jamiroquai. You know, just stuff that was out there, but not super great. You got Babyface. Uh, I don't know. Some of this stuff I don't even know. You got Easy E. I remember I had a couple of tapes of Easy E back when I had my video store. I would buy used cassette tapes and resell them from people around. They'd come and sell them to me that they were done with, but never was a fan. You got some Rod Stewart. Oh, you got the Duran Duran Wedding album, which probably would be in my top 10 because that had like Ordinary World and another song on there that was really good. Super interesting album. I like Duran Duran a lot, and that was a pretty great album by them. Dinosaur Jr. never got into them. Better Than Ezra. They had like one song I liked. Lemonheads, never liked them. Crowded House, okay. Uh, what's the guy lead singer of Crowded House? Glenn Glenn something or something Glenn or something like that. He's now the lead singer of Fleetwood Mac, believe it or not. Um, so check that out. And then yeah, Ice Cube, Big Head Todd and the Monsters. I actually liked Big Head Todd and the Monsters back then. Not just because I've got a big head and my name is Todd, but I actually like their music. And you got the Posies, Queen Latifah, New Order, PM Dawn. I actually had a PM Dawn uh, cassette. Would listen to it a little bit back then, back in those days, but not ever again. Not my deal. So yeah, that's kind of what what my top six kind of comes up against those. It comes up against those types of albums and what was released that year. And so I like my list. I think it's a pretty good one. It's me. It's more my style of music. But if you have some other opinions, I wouldn't mind hearing about it in the comments. Also, I always mean to say this first, and I always forget because most people don't get this far in my videos because I can see by the analytics how far they watch or listen, and I'm just not attracting a lot of views, and I'm not attracting people that do view it. It's not interesting enough to them to get this far. But if you are that minute percentage that is here right now listening to me point my finger at you and watching me do that, please subscribe. Please like the video and comment and click the notification bell so you can be notified when I put out more content, which is going to be pretty much daily. And also go down to the description. I've got some really delicious coffee that I'm selling. It's called Life Boost Coffee. I've got a discount code down there for 30% off. It's Todd30 is the code. So use that and try this coffee. It's really good, really good. I've been drinking it for weeks now, and I've been drinking the same coffee from Trader Joe's for years, and which I've tried different ones, and I found the one I like at Trader Joe's, but this one blows that one away, just out of the water. I mean, it's a little more expensive, but it's because it's good coffee. It's organic and it's completely clean coffee, and it's really good. So try that. Also, there's a couple of areas down like PayPal and things like that if you want to just donate to help the channel and help me keep this going, so I can try to build it up to something that has some subscribers and some following, and I can get some more. Once that happens, it's going to be easier for me to get more interviews with people that are bigger and that you may know outside of my local area, which is really fun for me to talk to these people. But I'd like to get some other people too, and I'm not going to be able to do that until I grow this channel to a larger audience. And right now it's at 64 subscribers, and it has been holding strong at 64 for weeks now. I haven't got a new subscriber for weeks. So let's hope that all this effort's going to pay off at some point. And I appreciate all of you that are watching now. And if you have any suggestions for like album reviews or anything like that, I'd be happy to hear them, and I'd be happy to do them. I've got a couple buddies that like to do album reviews with me. I got another guy that wants to come on board and help me with some of that. It's just fun to have, a conversation between two people instead of just watching me yammer on about music I like. So thanks again for watching, guys. Check out those things, all the links in the description, and all like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'd really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you next time, and we'll time travel to 1994. All right, thanks guys. You have a great day.